Chris Salcedo
is on the Blaze Radio Network.
The National Football League has, well, I think it's fair to say, has been in a mess. The way they have handled these abuse allegations against high-profile players is quite astonishing, and I don't think you could have handled it any more poorly. I also think there's something cultural going on here. I think this is an attack on a profitable institution, a very masculine institution, and probably an institution that is seen as being very patriotic. That's why a lot of the folks on the left are jumping on this bandwagon, but there are serious concerns about this. And I want to talk about it with my next guest, Lori Vann. She's a licensed professional counselor, supervisor, and has studied and worked with abuse issues for more than 15 years. She's a professional speaker. Ms. Vann has presented to statewide and local conferences on abuse and given numerous parenting seminars. Her areas of expertise are self-injury, boundary issues, perfectionism, and assertive communication. Ms. Vann, welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show here on The Blaze.
Well, thank you.
Glad you've made it. Look, there is a subtext that is developing, especially surrounding the Adrian Peterson case. We conservatives for years have been battling this idea that liberals are way too permissive with their young, that they have tried to undermine parental authority because they believe that the ultimate arbiter of the child should be the state and not the parents. So, you know, whether it's parental notification on abortion or a variety of other issues, the left has worked to undermine parental authority here in this country, and we conservatives are very cognizant of that. All of that being said, what Adrian Peterson allegedly did, and there are photographs, folks, but you know he's not seen the inside of a courtroom yet, so we have to say it that way. Allegedly did to this 4-year-old little boy, his son, is pretty outlandish. So, Lori, I guess what I'm going to ask you to do is to draw that line between abuse and discipline.
Well, you cross the line from discipline into abuse when you cause someone to bleed, get welts, or severe bruising. And from the pictures that I saw, there were absolutely lacerations up and down that boy's legs. But you also have to look at the location of where, in this case, a spanking took place. And when you are spanking on anywhere other than the bottom, you really risk doing some serious damage to the skin tissue or possibly even the internal organs.
And this was done with a switch, and there were some areas that I think should never be touched with a physicality of an open hand, much less a switch or a belt. And I'm sure that's a concern of yours as well.
Yes, I mean there are definitely locations. So when it comes to what I report to CPS, and unfortunately I've had to do many, is that it's okay if it's on the bottom, if it's an open hand, or even, I would say, you know, maybe a belt if the kid has clothes on, not skin to belt, and as long as it's not the buckle that hits the skin. Now on the bottom, that's sort of the area where you spank. Or in a really young child, you might pop them on their hand to get their attention. But when you have any kind of contact on the back, on the chest, on the legs, on the stomach, then that gets into the reportable areas, and plus you have to look at the tool that's being used. So with a switch, with a tree branch, you have multiple little sharp points, little sprigs and whatnot that can tear into the skin. And that obviously is a big problem, and we see the results of that with those pictures.
Yeah, and let's remind the folks we're dealing with Adrian Peterson, who is a big, strong man, and a 4-year-old little boy. I don't know of anybody. There is the concern that there are going to be those who use this case to further undermine parental authority. But I think this is just me, and I don't want to adjudicate this before it hits the courtroom. But I mean, with the circumstantial or with the evidence that we've been presented, some of it's pretty concrete. I don't see this as anything other than abuse.
Agreed. I mean, it absolutely meets all of the definitions of abuse. And that there's age-appropriate ways to discipline. As the child gets older, you modify the way that you discipline. So when it's a younger child that's 2 or 3 or 4, you know, a pop on the hand, you know, the stern voice, the timeouts, those are things that you use before you even consider maybe doing 1 or 2 pops on the butt. As they get into older ages, middle elementary school, let's say, then maybe 2 or 3 or 4 pops on the butt with a belt or with a hand, then that can be age appropriate. But again, spanking is supposed to be one of those last resorts, that you've exhausted these other forms of discipline, that you've given them the warning, that you've tried to isolate them from something, that you've done maybe a short-term grounding if it's a younger child, because a 4-year-old in timeout for 10 minutes seems like an eternity for them.
Sure.
And then I think that, once you get to age 12, you really just need to look at other forms of discipline altogether, because a 12-year-old is thinking, yeah, I'll take a spanking over being grounded from my iPhone, sure.
Lori Vann, where can folks get in touch with you if they want to investigate this further, especially those who want to guard themselves from the left, which is purely predictable? The left wing will try to use this case to undermine parental authority, and I'm sure that you will give them tools. Where can they go?
They can go on my website at LoriVannCounseling.com, and it's LORIVANN counseling.com, or they can shoot me an email at Lori@LoriVann.com.
All right, Lori Vann, licensed professional counselor. Appreciate your time. 15 years experience, too, folks. She knows what she's talking about right here on the Chris Salcedo Show. Thank you. More to come on the other side of the break, folks.